I stood in front of the FBI field office on 4th Street with a banker's box full of evidence and the kind of calm that only comes after you've already lost everything worth crying over. The agent at the intake desk looked at me like I was about to report a stolen bicycle. I set the box down and said, "My sister and my husband conspired to commit identity theft and fraud. $640,000. I have documentation for every transaction. I also know where they're planning to meet tonight." Her pen stopped moving. "Ma'am, that's a serious allegation. I know, that's why I'm here instead of handling it myself. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. If you're watching this from somewhere right now, leave a comment and tell me what city you're in. I need to know I'm not alone in thinking what I did next was justified. Some people in my family still think I should have handled this privately. After everything you're about to hear, you tell me if there was any other way. To understand how I ended up in that federal building with a box full of evidence against my own sister and the man I'd been married to for 9 years, I have to take you back to the beginning. Back to when I still believed family meant something. My name is Rebecca Cartwright. I'm 41 years old. I was a senior compliance officer at Morrison Financial Group, a mid-sized investment firm in downtown Philadelphia. I made $173,000 a year, plus bonuses. I didn't come from money. I worked for every credential on my resume: MBA from Temple, Series 7, Series 66, and CFA charter. My younger sister Natalie grew up in the same 3-bedroom row house I did, but somehow we ended up in completely different tax brackets by the time we hit our 30s. She worked part-time at a boutique fitness studio and lived off credit cards and the generosity of men she dated. I met my husband, David Cartwright, at a networking event in 2012. He was a pharmaceutical sales rep, good-looking, charming in that effortless way some men have where they make you feel like the most interesting person in the room. We were married by 2014, small wedding. His family flew in from Arizona. My parents cried during the vows. Natalie was my maid of honor. She wore lavender and smiled the entire day. The reception, she pulled me aside and said, "You really landed one, Becca. Don't screw it up." I should have heard the edge in her voice. For the first few years, things were fine, not perfect, but functional. David traveled a lot for work. I was building my career. We bought a modest townhouse in Fishtown, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, nothing extravagant. I handled all the finances because David was hopeless with money. He made around $90,000 a year, but he spent like he made twice that. I set up automatic payments for everything. I monitored the accounts. I kept us solvent. Natalie visited often. Too often, looking back, she'd show up unannounced on weekends, always with some crisis. Broke up with another boyfriend, got fired from another job, needed to borrow money for rent. David was always generous with her, too generous. "She's family," he'd say, handing her $200 in cash. I'd grit my teeth and let it go because I didn't want to be the controlling wife who policed every transaction. My parents adored David, my mother especially. She'd always been harder on me than on Natalie. I was the serious one, the one who didn't need coddling. Natalie was the baby, the one who needed protection. When I graduated summa cum laude from undergrad, my mother said, "That's wonderful, honey, now don't let it go to your head." When Natalie barely scraped through community college, my mother threw her a party. At family dinners, David would charm everyone. He'd compliment my mother's cooking, ask my father about the Eagles, make Natalie laugh with inside jokes I wasn't part of. I'd sit there eating pot roast and feeling like a guest in my own family. My mother would look at David and then at me and say, "You're lucky, Rebecca. He's patient with you, patient with me," as if I were some kind of difficult project he'd taken on. But I kept my mouth shut because I was building something. In 2016, I was promoted to Senior Compliance Officer. My salary jumped to $148,000. I started contributing more to our retirement accounts. I opened a high-yield savings account and funneled money into it every month. David didn't notice. He didn't care. As long as his credit cards worked and his car payments cleared, he was content. Natalie started spending more time at our house. She'd come over on Thursday nights when David was home and I was working late. I'd come back at 9 or 10 and find them watching movies in the living room, empty wine bottles on the coffee table. "We were just hanging out," David would say. Natalie would stretch like a cat and say, "You work too much, Becca. You should relax more." I told myself I was being paranoid. In 2018, David started talking about starting his own business. He wanted to leave pharmaceutical sales and launch a consulting firm. He had no business plan, no capital, and no experience running a company. I told him we needed to be realistic. "You're always so negative," he said. "You never believe in me." I believed in numbers. Numbers don't lie. Natalie, on the other hand, thought it was a brilliant idea. She'd sit at our kitchen table with David sketching out logos on napkins, talking about branding and office space. My mother chimed in during Sunday dinners. "You should support your husband's dreams, Rebecca. Don't be selfish." I had just closed a deal at work that saved Morrison Financial $3.2 million in regulatory fines. I said nothing. Then came April 2019, the first. David came home and told me he needed $20,000 to invest in a consulting opportunity with a colleague. I asked for details. He got defensive. Why do you always need to control everything? This is a good opportunity, you'll see. I didn't give him the money. 2 weeks later, I found out he'd opened a credit card in his name and maxed it out. $19,800. The bill came to our house. When I confronted him, he said, I knew you wouldn't help me, so I handled it myself. I paid off the card. I added it to the mental ledger I was keeping. Natalie was at our house that weekend. I was upstairs working. I heard them in the kitchen, voices low. I came down the stairs quietly and stood in the hallway where they couldn't see me. She's impossible, David said. Everything has to be her way. You deserve better, Natalie said. You're too good for her. I walked into the kitchen. They both turned. Natalie smiled brightly. David looked at his phone. I poured myself water from the tap and said, Natalie, don't you have somewhere to be? She left 10 minutes later. That night, David and I had the fight, the big one. He told me I was cold, controlling, and joyless. I told him he was reckless, immature, and bleeding us dry financially. He slept on the couch. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering when exactly I'd become the villain in my own marriage. I didn't know it yet, but that fight was the moment they started planning. It was small things at first, mail that went missing, statements I never received. I'd check our accounts online and everything looked normal, so I didn't press it. David started working from home more often. He'd set up a little office in our spare bedroom. I'd hear him on calls, his voice animated, excited. I asked him once what he was working on. Just some new client stuff, he said. You wouldn't be interested. I let it go. In June of 2019, my mother called me at work. Natalie's in trouble again, she said. She owes her landlord 3 months' rent. Can you help her out? I was tired. Mom, I've helped her out a dozen times. She needs to figure this out on her own. My mother's voice turned cold. You've always been selfish, Rebecca, ever since you were a little girl. You got all the brains and Natalie got all the heart. The least you can do is help your sister when she's struggling. I hung up and transferred $2,000 to Natalie's account. She texted me 2 hours later. Thanks, sis, you're the best. She didn't invite me to the new apartment she moved into a month later, the one with the exposed brick and the rooftop access, the one that cost twice what her old place did. David started traveling more, quick trips, overnight stays in Delaware, New York, Atlantic City. Work stuff, he'd say, client meetings. I was drowning in my own job. Morrison was going through an acquisition, and I was leading the compliance integration. 80-hour weeks, I barely noticed he was gone, but I noticed the charges. In September, I saw a charge on our joint credit card for a hotel in Wilmington, $462. I called David. What's this charge? Client dinner, he said. Had to book a room because the meeting ran late. Why didn't you expense it? It's complicated. I'll handle it. He didn't handle it. I paid it. Then in October, another charge, a restaurant in Cherry Hill. $318. I didn't ask that time. I just paid it and added it to the ledger. My mental ledger was getting long. On November 3rd, 2019, I came home early from work with a migraine. I never came home early. I walked into the house and heard voices upstairs, David's voice and Natalie's. I stood at the bottom of the stairs and listened. We have to be more careful, Natalie said. She's going to notice. She won't, David said. She's too busy. And even if she does, what's she going to do? Divorce me? She'd lose half of everything. She doesn't know about the account, right? No, and she's not going to. It's under my name, my social. She has no access. I walked up the stairs. The bedroom door was open. They were both sitting on the bed, fully clothed, laptops open. They looked up when I appeared in the doorway. Becca, Natalie jumped up. I didn't know you were coming home. Clearly, David closed his laptop. We're just working on some marketing stuff for my consulting business. In our bedroom, the dining room table was covered with your work stuff. I stared at him, then at Natalie. Get out, I said to her. Becca, don't be dramatic. Get out, she left. David and I stood in silence. What account were you talking about? I asked. What? I heard you. You said she doesn't know about the account. He laughed, forced, bright. You misheard. We were talking about a client account for the business. I didn't believe him, but I didn't have proof, so I did what I'd been doing for months. I nodded. I took my migraine medicine. I went to bed and I started digging. I began checking our credit reports every week. I logged into every financial account we had. I monitored every transaction. For 2 months, I found nothing unusual. Our joint checking, our joint savings, our mortgage, our credit cards, all normal, but David's behavior wasn't normal. He became secretive with his phone. He'd take calls in the car, in the backyard, anywhere I wasn't. He started showering at odd times right after coming home from work. He bought new cologne. He started going to the gym. Natalie stopped coming around as much. When she did, she was overly friendly, too friendly. She'd hug me and ask about work and compliment my hair. My mother mentioned during Sunday dinner that Natalie had started seeing someone new. A wonderful man, my mother said. Very successful. She won't tell us his name yet, but she's glowing. I looked at David. He was cutting his steak, face neutral. On January 15, 2020, I did something I'd never done before. I went through David's laptop while he was in the shower. I found a folder labeled Business Docs. Inside were bank statements for an account I'd never seen before, a checking account at a credit union I didn't recognize. The statements went back 7 months. The balance was $18,643. Deposits came in regularly, small amounts, 500 here, 700 there. The deposit description said things like consulting fee and client payment. Withdrawals were frequent, cash withdrawals mostly, a few transfers to an account number I didn't recognize. I took photos of every page with my phone. When David came out of the shower, I was sitting on the bed with the laptop closed. "You okay?" he asked. "Fine. Just tired." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay next to him in the dark and thought about the account. The deposits didn't make sense. David didn't have consulting clients. He barely worked anymore. He'd been building the business for over a year with no revenue to show for it. So where was the money coming from? I decided to find out. The next morning, I called the credit union. I pretended to be confirming account details. "I need to verify the account holders for account number ending in 4721, I said. The representative hesitated. "Ma'am, I can't give out account holder information without proper authorization. I'm one of the account holders, Rebecca Cartwright." Typing sounds, a pause. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but there's no Rebecca Cartwright listed on this account. Can you tell me who is listed?" "I can confirm there are two authorized users, David Cartwright and Natalie Brennan." I thanked her and hung up. Natalie Brennan was my sister's full name. I sat in my car in the Morrison parking garage for 20 minutes, staring at nothing. They had a joint account, David and Natalie, my husband and my sister. I went upstairs to my office, closed the door, and opened my laptop. I pulled up the photos I'd taken of the statements and looked at the deposit dates. Then I cross-referenced them with our joint account. The deposits into the secret account happened 2 to 3 days after I made transfers into our joint savings. I'd been funding it. Every time I put money into our savings, David would transfer a portion out and deposit it into the account he shared with Natalie. Small amounts so I wouldn't notice. $500 here, $800 there, $1,000 occasionally. Over 7 months, he'd siphoned off at least $20,000. I went to the bathroom and threw up. When I came back to my desk, I did the math. If this had been going on for 7 months and I hadn't noticed, what else had I missed? I pulled a credit report on David, then on myself. The report for David showed 3 credit cards I didn't recognize, all opened within the past 14 months. Total balance across all 3, $41,200. I pulled a full credit report, the kind that shows every inquiry, every account, every hard pull. That's when I saw it. An auto loan opened 8 months ago, $62,000 financed. Monthly payment, $987. We didn't have a new car. I called the lender. I gave them the loan number and said I needed to verify the vehicle information. 2019 Mercedes C-Class, the representative said. Silver, registered to Natalie Brennan. I hung up. I sat at my desk and stared at the wall. David had taken out a car loan in his name for my sister, $62,000. He'd been making the payments from the secret account they shared, which he'd been funding with money he stole from our joint savings. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I opened a new document on my laptop and started a spreadsheet. Column 1, date. Column 2, transaction. Column 3, amount. Column 4, evidence. I worked through lunch. I didn't eat. I went through 2 years of bank statements, credit card statements, loan documents, and credit reports. I cataloged every suspicious transaction, every unexplained charge, every mysterious transfer. By the end of the day, I had a list of 63 separate transactions, totaling $87,900. But that was just what I could see in our joint accounts. What if there were more accounts I didn't know about? I went home that night and acted normal. I kissed David when he came downstairs. I made dinner. We watched television. He fell asleep on the couch. I went upstairs and took photos of every document in his office, bank statements, tax returns, old pay stubs, credit card offers, everything. Over the next 3 weeks, I built a case. I found 2 more credit cards. Another personal loan for $15,000, a line of credit for $30,000, all in David's name, all opened within the past 18 months, and then I found the mortgage application. It was in a file folder labeled Taxes 2018, a mortgage pre-approval letter from a lender I didn't recognize, pre-approved amount $450,000, applicants David Cartwright and Natalie Brennan. The letter was dated November 2019. They were buying a house together. I took the letter to work the next day and made copies. Then I put the original back exactly where I'd found it. That weekend, my mother called. "We're having a family dinner on Sunday," she said. "Your father's birthday, don't be late." I arrived at my parents' house at 5. David was already there, sitting in the living room with my father, watching a basketball game. Natalie was in the kitchen with my mother, laughing about something. I walked in and set a bottle of wine on the counter. Natalie turned and hugged me. "Hey sis," she smelled like expensive perfume, the kind I couldn't afford even with my salary. Dinner was pot roast, mashed potatoes, and green beans, my mother's standard menu. We sat around the table, my father at the head, my mother to his right, David to his left, Natalie next to David, me at the far end across from my mother. My mother raised her glass. "To family," she said. We all clinked glasses. Natalie looked radiant. She was wearing a bracelet I hadn't seen before. Delicate gold chain, small diamonds. It caught the light every time she moved her hand. "That's beautiful," my mother said, nodding at the bracelet. Where did you get it? Natalie glanced at David just for a second. Then she smiled at my mother. A gift, she said, from someone special. The mystery man, my mother asked. Maybe. David cut his pot roast and said nothing. I took a sip of wine and watched them. My mother turned to me. Rebecca, you look exhausted. Are you sleeping enough? I'm fine, Mom. You work too much. You should take a vacation. David, don't you think she should take a vacation? David looked up. Yeah, sure, we could go somewhere. Natalie's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Where should we go? I asked. David shrugged. I don't know. Beach Mountains. How about Wilmington? I said. I saw a hotel charge from there a few months ago. You said it was nice. The table went quiet. David set his fork down. That was a work thing, right? Client meeting, my mother frowned. Rebecca, don't interrogate your husband at the dinner table. I smiled. I'm not interrogating, I'm just making conversation. We ate in silence for a minute, then my father changed the subject to the Eagles. David relaxed. Natalie started breathing again. I excused myself to the bathroom. On the way back, I passed Natalie's purse on the hall table. It was open. Inside, I could see her wallet, her phone, and a set of keys. I recognized the key fob, Mercedes. I went back to the table and finished my dinner. I complimented my mother's cooking. I sang happy birthday to my father. I hugged everyone goodbye. On the drive home, David was quiet. You okay? I asked. Fine. You seem tense. I'm not tense. We didn't speak the rest of the way. That night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. David was asleep next to me, snoring softly. I thought about the mortgage application, the car loan, the secret account, the credit cards, the jewelry. I thought about my mother telling me I worked too much, my sister hugging me, David sitting in my parents' living room charming my father, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront them, not yet, not until I knew everything. I was going to investigate like I was auditing a company, methodical, thorough, documented. Over the next 6 weeks, I became a detective. I installed a monitoring app on our home Wi-Fi router that logged every device and every website visited. I bought a small voice-activated recorder and hid it in David's office. I set up alerts on our credit reports so I'd be notified of any new accounts or inquiries. I started coming home at odd times, lunchtime, mid-afternoon, late evening. I'd walk in quietly and listen. Most of the time, the house was empty, but twice I heard David on the phone in his office. I stood outside the door and recorded him on my phone. I know, baby, he said, just a few more months. Once the house closes, we'll have everything we need. Another time, she's completely clueless. I could open an account in her name and she wouldn't even notice. I saved the recordings. I also started tracking Natalie. I didn't follow her physically, but I monitored her social media. She posted constantly. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, pictures of her life, brunches at expensive restaurants, shopping bags from Nordstrom, nights out with friends. In one photo, posted on March 8, 2020, she was sitting in a car, a silver Mercedes. The caption said, "New ride, new vibe." The photo had 63 likes. One of them was David. On March 20th, I got a notification from our credit monitoring service, a new inquiry on David's credit report. The lender was a mortgage company. I called them and pretended to be following up on an application. I need to confirm the property address, I said. The representative gave me an address in Haddonfield, New Jersey, a wealthy suburb 15 minutes outside Philadelphia. I drove there that weekend while David was at the gym. The house was beautiful, 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, 2-car garage, brick facade, mature trees, professionally landscaped yard. There was a sold sign on the front lawn. I took pictures. Back home, I looked up the property records online. The sale price was $425,000. Settlement date, April 30th, 2020, 6 weeks away. I opened my spreadsheet and added a new line, transaction, home purchase. Amount $425,000, evidence, mortgage inquiry, property records, photos. Then I did something I should have done months ago. I called a divorce attorney. Her name was Catherine Stone. She was a partner at a mid-sized firm in Center City. She specialized in high-asset divorces and fraud cases. I'd worked with her firm on a compliance matter 2 years prior. She was brilliant, ruthless, and expensive. I made an appointment for March 25th. I told David I had a dentist appointment. Catherine's office was on the 18th floor of a glass tower on Market Street, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, sleek furniture, abstract art on the walls. Catherine was 52, impeccably dressed, with gray hair cut in a sharp bob. She shook my hand and gestured to a chair. "Tell me everything," she said. I did. I walked her through the timeline. The secret account. The car loan, the credit cards, the mortgage application, the recordings, the evidence I'd collected. I handed her a flash drive with copies of everything. She plugged it into her laptop and started reviewing files. She didn't speak for 7 minutes, then she looked up. "Rebecca, this isn't just infidelity. This is fraud, identity theft, possibly more." "I know. How much total are we talking about?" I pulled out my spreadsheet. "Based on what I can document, approximately $237,000, but I think there's more I haven't found." Catherine leaned back in her chair. "Have you confronted your husband?" "No." "Good, don't, not yet." She stood and walked to the window. "Here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to secure your assets. You're going to open new accounts in your name only and transfer your income there. Do not tell your husband. Second, we're going to pull a full forensic financial audit. I have an investigator who specializes in this. Third, we're going to freeze your joint accounts and credit to prevent further damage. And fourth, we're going to build a criminal case. Criminal, Rebecca, your husband has been committing fraud. If he's opening accounts in your name without your consent, that's identity theft. If he's lying on loan applications, that's wire fraud. This goes beyond divorce. This is federal. My hands were shaking. What about my sister? If she's knowingly participating, she's an accomplice. I nodded slowly. Catherine sat back down. I need to ask you something. Are you prepared for this to get ugly? Because it will. Your family will take sides. Your husband will fight back. This won't be quiet. I thought about the bracelet on Natalie's wrist, the smirk on David's face, my mother telling me to be supportive. I'm prepared, I said. Catherine smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who'd just been handed a winnable case. Good, let's destroy him. I left her office and went back to work. I sat at my desk and stared at my computer screen, not seeing anything. For 9 years, I'd been married to a man who was stealing from me. For longer than that, I'd had a sister who thought I was too stupid to notice. They were wrong. That afternoon, I opened new bank accounts at a different institution. I set up direct deposit to route my paycheck there starting April 1st. I transferred half of our joint savings, $32,000, into my new account. It was legally mine. I'd earned it. Then I called Catherine's investigator. His name was Marcus Chen, former FBI Financial Crimes Unit. He ran a private investigation firm that specialized in asset tracing and forensic accounting. We met at a coffee shop in Old City. He was in his early 50s, fit, with graying hair and sharp eyes. I handed him the flash drive. I need to know everything, I said. Every account, every loan, every dollar. How far back? 3 years, he nodded. This'll take about 2 weeks, maybe 3. I'll need access to your credit reports, bank statements, tax returns, anything you have. I have most of it. Good. I'll also need written authorization to pull records from financial institutions. I signed the forms he handed me. One more thing, he said. If I find criminal activity, I'm obligated to report it. I'm counting on it. He left. I sat in the coffee shop and drank a latte I didn't taste. The next 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I went to work, I came home, I made dinner, I watched television with David, I kissed him goodnight, I played the role of oblivious wife while my entire world was being dismantled and cataloged by a former federal agent. David didn't notice anything different. Natalie called me twice during that time, once to ask if I wanted to go shopping, once to invite me to brunch. I made excuses both times. My mother called to tell me I was being distant. You're always so wrapped up in your work, she said. You should make more time for family. I'll try, Mom. On April 10, 2020, Marcus called me. We need to meet, he said, in person. We met at his office in Rittenhouse Square, a small suite on the 3rd floor of a converted brownstone. He had files spread across a conference table. Sit down, he said. I sat. He handed me a folder. This is what I found. I opened it. The first page was a summary sheet. Total fraudulent activity, $643,200. I stared at the number. Marcus walked me through it. Your husband has been running this scheme for at least 2 years, probably longer, but the trail only goes back that far. He's opened 14 accounts in his name, 7 credit cards, 3 personal loans, 2 lines of credit, 1 auto loan, and 1 mortgage. Total debt across all accounts, $491,000. How did he get approved for that much credit? He inflated his income on the applications, listed you as a co-applicant without your knowledge on 3 of them, forged your signature on 2 loan documents. My stomach dropped. That's identity theft. Yes. He flipped to the next page, but it gets worse. In addition to the accounts in his name, I found 3 accounts opened in your name without your authorization. What? Credit cards and 1 personal loan. Total balance, $68,400, all opened within the past 14 months. The payments have been made sporadically, which is why you didn't notice, but you're legally liable for the debt. I couldn't speak. Marcus continued. Your sister is listed as an authorized user on 2 of your husband's credit cards. She's made purchases totaling approximately $39,000. She's also a co-signer on the auto loan and the mortgage. So she knew she had to. You can't co-sign a mortgage without sitting at a closing table. He handed me another document. This is the deed for the house in Haddonfield. It's in both their names. They closed on April 2nd, 8 days ago. I looked at the deed. David Cartwright and Natalie Brennan, joint tenants with right of survivorship. They bought a house together. Yes, I set the folder down. What do I do? Marcus leaned forward. You have 3 options. 1, you file for divorce and try to recoup your losses through civil court. 2, you report this to the police and let them handle it criminally. 3, you do both. What would you do? I'd do both, and I'd move fast, because in 2 weeks your husband is going to realize you've transferred money out of your joint account and he's going to panic. I stood up. Set up a meeting with Catherine tomorrow if possible. Already done. 10 a.m. I left Marcus's office and walked 8 blocks to my car. I sat behind the wheel and cried for the first time in months. Not because I was sad, because I was so angry I couldn't see straight. The meeting with Catherine the next morning was brief. We're filing for divorce immediately, she said, and we're filing a police report for identity theft and fraud. How long will this take? The divorce, 6 months minimum. The criminal case longer, but we can freeze his assets in the meantime. Do it. Catherine made a phone call. Within an hour, our joint accounts were frozen. David's access was revoked. His credit cards were flagged. Then she handed me a stack of papers. Divorce petition. Sign here, here, and here. I signed. We'll serve him tomorrow. At home, wherever you want. I thought about it. Serve him at my parents' house. Sunday dinner. Catherine raised an eyebrow. You're sure? Positive. She smiled, that same cold smile. I'll arrange it. I went home. David was in his office on the phone. I stood in the hallway and listened. I don't know, he was saying. She hasn't said anything. I think we're fine. A pause. Yeah, I'll check the account tonight. If the money's still there, we're good. I walked into the office. He looked up, startled. Hey, babe, he said. Didn't hear you come in. Who were you talking to? Just a client. What client? He hesitated. A potential consulting client. Nothing major. I nodded. Okay, I'm going to take a bath. I went upstairs, ran the water, and locked the bathroom door. Then I texted Catherine. He's going to check the account tonight. Move fast. She replied immediately. Already done. Account's frozen. He won't be able to access it. I sank into the bath and closed my eyes. Downstairs, I heard David's voice rise, then a crash, then silence. He just discovered the account was frozen. I stayed in the bath for 30 minutes. When I came out, David was standing in the bedroom. What did you do? He said. What are you talking about? The account. It's frozen. I can't access it. Which account? Our joint account. I wrapped my towel tighter. I don't know. Maybe there's a fraud alert. Have you checked with the bank? He stared at me. You did this. David, I have no idea what you're talking about. Call the bank in the morning. He turned and walked out. I got dressed and went to bed. He didn't come upstairs. The next morning, I woke up at 6 and left for work without seeing him. At 10, Catherine called. He tried to access 4 different accounts this morning, all frozen. He also tried to open a new credit card, declined. Good. The process server will be at your parents' house tomorrow at 5. Be ready. I hung up and took a deep breath. Tomorrow, everything would change. Sunday, April 12, 2020, my parents' house, 5 o'clock. I arrived early. My mother was in the kitchen making lasagna. My father was in the living room reading the paper. David arrived 10 minutes after me. He looked exhausted. He'd been up all night trying to figure out why his accounts were frozen. Natalie arrived at 4:45 wearing a sundress and heels. She hugged my mother, kissed my father on the cheek, and smiled at me. Hey, sis. Hey, we sat down for dinner at 5. My mother brought out the lasagna. My father poured wine. David sat across from me, barely touching his food. Natalie was chatty. She talked about a new yoga class she was taking, a brunch spot she'd discovered, a weekend trip she was planning. My mother hung on every word. At 5:15, the doorbell rang. My father frowned. Who's that? I'll get it, I said. I opened the door. A man in a suit stood on the porch holding an envelope. Rebecca Cartwright, he said. That's me. This is for David Cartwright. He handed me the envelope. I walked back into the dining room and set it on the table in front of David. What's this? He said. Open it. He opened it. His face went white. What is it? My mother asked. David didn't answer. He just stared at the papers. Natalie leaned over. Her eyes went wide. You're serving me with divorce papers? David said. At your parents' house. Yes, my mother stood up. Rebecca, what is going on? I looked at her, then at my father, then at Natalie. David has been stealing from me for 2 years. He's opened accounts in my name without my permission. He's forged my signature on loan documents. He's racked up over $600,000 in debt. And he's been doing it with Natalie. The room went silent. My mother's mouth opened. No sound came out. My father set his wine glass down very carefully. Natalie stood up. That's insane, Becca, you're being paranoid. I pulled a folder out of my bag and set it on the table. This is a forensic financial report prepared by a licensed investigator. It documents every fraudulent account, every forged signature, every stolen dollar. David and Natalie co-signed a mortgage for a house in Haddonfield. They have a joint bank account. He bought her a car with a loan in his name. They've been planning this for months. I opened the folder and spread the documents across the table. My mother picked up the mortgage deed. Her hands were shaking. My father looked at David. Is this true? David's jaw tightened. He looked at Natalie. She looked at the floor. Answer me, my father said. David stood up. This is ridiculous. She's making this up because she's controlling and jealous. I pulled out my phone and played one of the recordings. David's voice filled the room. She's completely clueless. I could open an account in her name and she wouldn't even notice. My mother dropped the deed. Natalie backed toward the door. I need to go. Sit down, my father said. His voice was ice. Natalie sat. My father turned to David. Get out of my house. Sir, I can explain. Get out. David looked at me. His face was red. You're going to regret this. No, I said. I really won't. He left. Natalie tried to follow. My father blocked her path. You're not going anywhere until you explain yourself. She started crying. Daddy, I didn't mean for it to happen. We fell in love. My mother made a sound like she'd been punched. I looked at Natalie. You didn't just fall in love. You conspired to commit fraud. You co-signed loans. You bought a house. You helped him steal from me. I didn't steal anything. I pulled out another document. This is a credit card statement. The card is in David's name. You're listed as an authorized user. Over the past year, you've made purchases totaling $39,000. Nordstrom, Saks, Tiffany, luxury hotels, all paid for with money David stole from me. I slid the statement across the table. My mother picked it up. She read it. Then she looked at Natalie like she'd never seen her before. Natalie, she whispered. What did you do? Natalie's tears turned to sobs. I didn't know it was that much. I thought he had his own money. Told me he had savings. You bought a house with him. You signed a mortgage. You knew. Natalie covered her face with her hands. My father stood there silent. I gathered my documents and put them back in the folder. I'm filing a police report tomorrow for identity theft and fraud. If either of you contact me, I'll add harassment to the list. I walked out. Behind me, I heard my mother crying. I got in my car and drove home. When I walked into the house, it was empty. David's car was gone. I went upstairs to his office. The desk was cleared out. His laptop, his files, his personal items all gone. He'd run. I texted Catherine. He's gone, took his things and left. She replied, expected. I'll file an emergency motion tomorrow to freeze his assets and prevent him from leaving the state. I sat on the couch and stared at the wall. My phone rang. It was my mother. I didn't answer. She called 4 more times. Then she texted, how could you do this to your sister? I blocked her number. My father called an hour later. I answered. Rebecca, he said. His voice was rough. I'm sorry. For what? For not seeing it, for not protecting you. I closed my eyes. It's not your fault, Dad. Your mother is devastated. I know. She's saying you're overreacting, that you're being cruel. What do you think? A long pause. I think your sister and your husband betrayed you in the worst possible way, and I think you're handling it better than most people would. I started crying. I'm proud of you, Becca. I should have said that more often. We talked for 20 minutes. When we hung up, I felt lighter. The next morning, I went to the police station with Catherine and Marcus. We sat in a small room with 2 detectives. I walked them through everything. I handed over the forensic report, the recordings, the forged documents. One of the detectives, a woman in her 40s with short brown hair, looked at the report and whistled. $643,000. Yes, and your sister was involved. Yes, she exchanged a look with her partner. This is a federal case. We'll need to loop in the FBI. Catherine nodded. We're prepared to cooperate fully. The detective stood up. We'll be in touch. In the meantime, don't contact your husband or your sister. Let us handle it. I left the station and went to work. At my desk, I opened my email. There was a message from David. Subject, you're making a mistake. Body, Becca, I know you're angry, but this is insane. You're going to destroy both of us over nothing. I made some bad financial decisions, but I never meant to hurt you. Please drop the charges and we can work this out. I still love you. I forwarded it to Catherine. She replied, do not respond. This is evidence. I deleted the email and got back to work. Over the next 2 weeks, things moved fast. The FBI opened an investigation. David and Natalie were both interviewed. David hired a lawyer. Natalie called my mother and begged her to make me drop the charges. My mother called my father. Tell Rebecca to stop this. My father said no. They stopped speaking. Catherine filed an emergency motion to freeze all of David's assets. The judge granted it. David's bank accounts, his credit cards, the house in Haddonfield, all frozen. Natalie tried to sell the Mercedes. The FBI seized it. David moved in with a friend. Natalie moved back in with my mother. I stayed in the townhouse, alone. On May 1, 2020, the FBI formally charged David with wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. Natalie was charged as an accomplice. Their arraignment was scheduled for May 15th. Catherine called me the night before. Are you going? Yes, good. Bring tissues. It's going to be satisfying. She wasn't wrong. The courtroom was small. David sat at one table with his attorney. Natalie sat at another with a public defender she couldn't afford to replace. I sat in the gallery with Catherine. The judge read the charges. David and Natalie both pled not guilty. The prosecutor stood up. Your Honor, the evidence in this case is overwhelming. We have bank records, forged documents, and recorded confessions. We're requesting bail be set at $500,000 for Mr. Cartwright and $250,000 for Ms. Brennan. David's attorney objected. The judge overruled him. Bail was set. Neither David nor Natalie could pay it. They were both remanded to custody pending trial. I watched as they were led out of the courtroom in handcuffs. Natalie looked back at me. Her face was streaked with tears. I didn't look away. Outside the courthouse, my mother was waiting. She walked up to me, her face twisted with rage. Are you happy now? She said. Your sister is in jail because of you. I looked at her. My sister is in jail because she committed fraud. She made a mistake. You didn't have to destroy her life. She tried to destroy mine first. My mother stepped closer. You've always been selfish, Rebecca, always. Ever since you were a little girl, you can't stand to see anyone else be happy. Catherine put a hand on my arm. Mrs. Brennan, I'd advise you to walk away. My mother ignored her. If you don't drop these charges, you'll never see me again. I met her eyes. Okay. She stared at me. Then she turned and walked away. I haven't spoken to her since. The trial was set for August. But it never happened. David's attorney contacted Catherine. He wants to plead out. Catherine met with the prosecutor. They offered David a deal: plead guilty to all charges, agree to full restitution, and accept a sentence of 7 years in federal prison. David took it. Natalie was offered a separate deal: 3 years in prison and 5 years probation. She took it too. On August 7, 2020, they were both sentenced. I was in the courtroom. The judge asked if I wanted to make a statement. I stood up. Your Honor, I spent 9 years married to a man who saw me as a paycheck. I spent my entire life with a sister who saw me as competition. They didn't just steal money from me. They stole my trust, my dignity, and years of my life. I hope they use their time in prison to think about what they've done, because I've already moved on. I sat down. The judge nodded. Then she sentenced them both. David was let out first. He didn't look at me. Natalie was let out second. She was crying. I stood up and walked out of the courtroom. Catherine was waiting in the hall. How do you feel? Free, I said, and I meant it. The divorce was finalized on September 23, 2020. I got the townhouse. I got my retirement accounts. I got every dollar I could prove David had stolen, which amounted to $412,000 once the forensic accountants finished their work. The rest was tied up in legal fees and restitution orders that would follow him for the rest of his life. I sold the townhouse 3 weeks later. I couldn't stay there. Every room had a memory I didn't want anymore. I moved to a loft apartment in Northern Liberties, exposed brick, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the city skyline. It cost more than the townhouse mortgage, but I could afford it now. I wasn't splitting my income with a man who saw me as an ATM. Work became my anchor. Morrison Financial was going through a merger, and I was leading the compliance integration. It was brutal, high-stakes work, 16-hour days, conference calls at midnight, but I was good at it, better than good. In October, the CEO called me into his office and offered me a promotion, vice president of compliance. $219,000 a year plus equity. I accepted. My father called me every Sunday. We'd talk for an hour, sometimes two. He'd tell me about his week, ask about mine. He never mentioned my mother or Natalie unless I brought them up first. I rarely did. One Sunday in November, he said, "Your mother wants to talk to you." I don't want to talk to her. I know, but I thought I should tell you. What does she want? To apologize, she says. I laughed. It came out bitter. She doesn't want to apologize. She wants me to forgive Natalie. My father was quiet for a moment. You're probably right. Tell her no. I will. We never spoke about it again. Catherine became more than my attorney. She became a friend. We met for lunch once a month at a French bistro in Rittenhouse. She'd update me on David's appeals. He was trying to reduce his sentence, and I'd tell her about work, about my new apartment, about the life I was building. In December, she brought me a gift. A small box wrapped in silver paper. What's this? Open it. Inside was a silver keychain. Engraved on it were 3 words: "You survived this." I looked up. My eyes were wet. You did, Catherine said, and you're going to survive whatever comes next. I kept the keychain on my desk at work. Every time I looked at it, I remembered who I'd been a year ago, married to a fraud, funding my own betrayal, too afraid to see the truth. I wasn't that person anymore. In January of 2021, I got a message on LinkedIn. It was from a recruiter at a private equity firm in New York. They were looking for a chief compliance officer. Salary range started at $350,000. I took the call. The interview process took 6 weeks, 3 rounds of interviews, 2 presentations, a full day on site. They offered me the job in early March. $375,000, full benefits, relocation package, start date May 1st. I accepted. I gave Morrison 4 weeks' notice. My boss tried to counteroffer. I declined. Philadelphia had too many ghosts. I moved to Manhattan in late April. A 1-bedroom in Chelsea. Small but perfect. I could walk to work. I could disappear into 8 million people and never worry about running into someone from my old life. On my first day at the new job, I sat in my corner office on the 42nd floor and looked out at the city. I thought about the version of myself who'd walked into an FBI office with a box of evidence and a heart full of rage. She'd won. I heard from Natalie once. It was June of 2021. She'd been released early for good behavior after serving 18 months. She sent me a letter, handwritten, 4 pages. She said she was sorry. She said she'd made terrible choices. She said she'd been jealous of me our whole lives, jealous of my success, my intelligence, my ability to build a life without needing anyone. She said David had manipulated her, told her I didn't appreciate him, convinced her that what they were doing wasn't really wrong because I'd never noticed and I had so much money already. She said she hoped one day I could forgive her. She said she missed me. I read the letter twice, then I put it in a drawer and never responded. Forgiveness wasn't something I owed her. In August, my father called with news. My mother had filed for divorce. After 38 years of marriage, she decided she couldn't forgive him for choosing me over Natalie. How do you feel about that? I asked. Relieved, he said. I should have done it years ago. He moved into a condo in South Philly. Started going to Flyers games with his buddies. Started dating a woman he met at a book club. He sounded happier than I'd ever heard him. You should come visit, he said. I will. I went down for Thanksgiving, just the 2 of us. We cooked a small turkey, drank too much wine, watched football. It was the best Thanksgiving I'd had in years. David sent me a letter in December. It was forwarded from my old address. He was writing from federal prison in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. He had 5.5 years left on his sentence. He said he'd had a lot of time to think. He said he realized now how badly he'd hurt me. He said he wished he could take it back. He said he still loved me. The last line read, "I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me. I'll understand if you can't." I threw the letter away without finishing it. I didn't need his apology. I didn't need his regret. I needed him to be exactly where he was, locked in a cell, facing the consequences of what he'd done. In March of 2022, I got promoted again. Senior Vice President, $412,000, a team of 14 people reporting to me. I was 33 years old and one of the highest-ranking women in the firm. I bought a 2-bedroom apartment on the Upper West Side. I hired an interior designer. I filled it with furniture I actually liked, art I chose myself, books I wanted to read. Every piece of it was mine, no one else's taste, no one else's opinion. I started dating again, nothing serious at first. A few dinners, a few second dates that went nowhere. I wasn't in a hurry. I'd spent 9 years in a marriage that drained me. I could take my time finding someone who added to my life instead of subtracting from it. In June, I met someone. His name was Alan. He was a corporate attorney, 41, divorced, no kids. We met at a bar after a networking event. He made me laugh. He asked about my work and actually listened. He didn't try to fix my problems or offer unsolicited advice. He just listened. We went on a second date, then a third. By August, we were seeing each other twice a week. He asked about my ex-husband once. "What happened?" he said. "He stole from me $643,000, then went to prison for it." Alan set his wine glass down. "Jesus. Yeah, how did you?" He stopped. "I'm sorry, you don't have to talk about it." "It's okay," I caught him. I documented everything. I called the FBI. I sent him to prison, and then I moved on. Alan looked at me for a long time. "Remind me never to cross you." I smiled. "Good plan. We've been together for 2 years now. He knows the whole story. He's met my father. He understands why I don't talk to my mother or my sister. He doesn't push me to reconcile. He doesn't tell me I should forgive them for my own peace of mind. He just stands beside me and lets me be exactly who I am." September of 2023, I got a notification from the Bureau of Prisons. David was being released early. Time served plus good behavior. He'd be out in November. I felt nothing. Not fear, not anger, not even curiosity about where he'd go or what he'd do. He was a chapter I'd closed. The book had moved on. Natalie reached out again in October. She sent a message through my father. She wanted to meet for coffee. She wanted to explain. She wanted a chance to make things right. I told my father to tell her no. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Positive. She's your sister. She was my sister. Now she's just someone I used to know." He didn't argue. "I'm 44 now. I live in a city I love in an apartment that's entirely mine. I run a department of 32 people. I make $618,000 a year. I have a partner who respects me, a father who's proud of me, and a life I built from the ground up after someone tried to burn it down." My mother sent me a Christmas card last year. It had a handwritten note inside. "I know you're still angry, but family is family. I hope one day you'll come home." I didn't respond. Home isn't a place where people steal from you and expect you to smile about it. Home isn't where your pain is dismissed and your anger is called selfishness. Home isn't where love is conditional on how much you're willing to endure. I built my own home, and no one gets in unless they've earned it. David tried to contact me last month. He found me on LinkedIn and sent a message. "I know I don't deserve your time, but I'd like to talk. I owe you more than an apology. I owe you the truth." I blocked him. The truth was already out. It had been out for 4 years. The truth was $643,000 in stolen money, forged signatures, secret accounts, and a sister who thought sleeping with my husband was an acceptable way to compete with me. I didn't need him to explain it. Natalie got married last year. I found out through a mutual acquaintance. She married a man she met in a recovery group. They live in Delaware. She works at a nonprofit. She's apparently doing well. I'm glad for her. I genuinely am. I don't wish her harm. I just don't wish her anything at all. She's not part of my story anymore. Sometimes people ask me if I regret it, if I regret pressing charges, sending them to prison, choosing justice over family. I don't, not for a second, because the alternative was letting them win. The alternative was swallowing my anger and pretending it was fine, that betrayal was just part of life, that I should be grateful for the crumbs of respect they threw my way. I refused to live like that, so I gathered my evidence. I called the FBI. I stood in front of a judge in a courtroom full of people and said, "This is what they did to me, and I'm not letting it go." And they faced the consequences. Every single one of them. David lost 7 years of his life to a federal prison. Natalie lost 3. My mother lost her marriage and her relationship with me, and I lost a family that never valued me in the first place, but I gained something better. I gained myself. My name is Rebecca Cartwright. I was married to a man who saw me as a wallet. I had a sister who saw me as an obstacle. I had a mother who saw me as the problem. They were wrong, and now they know it. If someone in your life is stealing from you, whether it's money, time, peace, or dignity, you don't owe them forgiveness. You don't owe them a second chance. You don't owe them anything except the truth. And sometimes the truth is walking into an FBI office with a box full of evidence and a smile on your face. Hit that like button if you believe people should face the consequences of their actions. Comment freedom below if you've ever had to choose yourself over people who didn't deserve you. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, because you are not the villain for refusing to be the victim. You're the author of your own life, and some chapters deserve to end.